Hello and welcome to Alchemy Radio, where the only thing we ask of you is that you keep an open mind. Today's guest is British author David Icke, who has written 20 books and travelled to over 55 countries since 1990. His books reveal how a hidden hand is behind world-changing events like the attacks of 9/11 and the manufactured wars in the Middle East. As part of a mass mind manipulation technique he is dubbed Problem Reaction Solution. While being controversial and often heavily attacked, David Icke has driven on with his unrelenting investigation into subject areas that others don't dare touch. He reveals information that has been kept from a dumbed-down population and has allowed the establishment to treat them as nothing more than slaves to a sinister hidden agenda. David Icke, you're extremely welcome to Alchemy Radio. How are you today?
I'm good, John. I'm very good. I've just been out for a very long walk, a long walk for me anyway, and me body's willing, or the spirit's willing, and me body's just about finished it, so I'll use my mind now. My body's sitting in this chair and needs to, I tell you.
Well, that's all we ask of you, and what better way to prepare yourself, I suppose, for an interview. David, tell us a little bit about your background as well, because there will be listeners who won't be overly familiar with you.
Yes, no one's overly familiar with me. I was a guy brought up on a council estate in Leicester, and from very early on in my childhood I wanted to be a footballer, so that was my goal. Well, it would be, and I was a goalkeeper, and people were telling me, "Oh, you know, not many people become professional footballers, so you know, what are you really going to do, basically?" And I always said I'm going to be a footballer. And I left school at 15, never took any exams, went to be a footballer, and played for Coventry City and one or two others. But from the age of 15 and a half, my left knee started to swell up for no reason. Then other joints did. It turned out I had rheumatoid arthritis. So at the age of 21, my career ended. And I'd always been interested in journalism, writing. And so that's what I went into. And I was trying to get a job on a newspaper somewhere in the country. Having left school at 15, the nearest I went to university was playing for Oxford United for 3 months. And it was like, you must be joking. But I got a job on a weekly paper, funny enough, in Leicestershire, that was just about read by the people that wrote it. Not many people more than that. You know, it would have been on a life support machine if it had been human in terms of its circulation. Right. But the funny thing is, once you get in, people stop asking you about your education qualifications. It's ridiculous. And I went on to work for independent radio and BBC television. And then towards the end of the 90s, well, actually the 80s rather, and actually more like the middle of the 80s, I started to get very interested in the environment and what we were doing, and I got into politics eventually, trying to make a difference, and became national spokesman for the Green Party. It was ludicrously quick time. You have to pinch yourself. Yeah. And then the big thing was that changed my life completely was I went through if you might call it a spiritual awakening. I'm not talking religion here. My goodness me, God save us from religion. But I'm talking a totally new way of looking at life. And I started on a journey in about 1990, though it really started in 89. And I've been going on ever since. And I've been to 55 countries. I've spoken in most of them, and the rest were researching. And it's led me on a journey that has opened up the world to me in the most extraordinary way, both about the nature of reality itself and also about the forces behind those that appear to be in power in the world that are really in power. And there's a reason why in countries all over the world, whether you vote for this party or that party, the same agenda, the same things keep unfolding. For instance, Tony Blair brought massive Big Brother legislation in during his 10 years. Gordon Brown followed it up, and then Cameron came in saying, we must roll back the Big Brother state. And once he got in, he's been Big Brother on steroids. And this is the same with Obama, following Bush. Oh, you know, oh no, he's anti-war, well, like Icke is, you know, and away he goes doing the Bush thing on steroids. So, you know, all this this research, this traveling, this amazing synchronicity and coincidences in my life over the last nearly quarter of a century now have led me to this information, which I put together in what I call an exercise in dot connecting. And you realize that what appears on the face of it to be completely unconnected subjects, periods, whether historical or present day, people, events, all of it that seem to be unconnected actually are fundamentally connected, and it's not a series of dots, it's not a series of strands that you uncover, it's actually strands in the same tapestry, and the world becomes much more explainable in terms of current world events. What's happened in Ireland with the financial crash and the euro and all that stuff, all can be explained once you realize what the big picture is.
And that's the fascinating thing about your work. The first of your books that I read was The Biggest Secret, David, and I was really struck by the breadth and how all-encompassing that was as a single book, because it touched on so much of the geopolitical situation, and it went right back in time to ancient cultures and myths and legends, that kind of thing. But that was really only the tip of the iceberg in terms of the knowledge that you've managed to uncover at this stage. So you're talking about things from, as you say, you're dot connecting. So you could talk about something on a spiritual level on one hand, and you could talk about Tony Blair on the other hand, and the dots do connect. So I guess, when for you did things start to really make sense, or pieces of the jigsaw puzzle start to fall into place once you embarked on this journey of research and, I suppose, awakening, if you want to call it that?
Well, I mean, the analogy of the jigsaw, John, is very apt, because it's been like being handed pieces in a puzzle. And, you know, when you are doing a jigsaw puzzle, I guess people have different ways of doing it, but what I used to do is to look for the straight pieces, and the straight pieces then give you the frame in which you then start adding the other pieces, and the more pieces you add, the clearer the picture becomes, so you can actually see where the later pieces go much easier than the earlier ones. And that's what it's been like. And for me, the real pennies began to drop once I saw symbolically the straight pieces, the frame. Because when you say a few people, and compared with 7 billion plus, it is a tiny few people, are actually controlling the direction of world events and the direction of human society, the question immediately comes, and it's understandable, is it's impossible. A few people couldn't control and direct the lives of 7 billion. I mean, the numbers don't add up. But once you realize how they do it, and when you realize that, you realize actually it's actually quite straightforward, the way that it's possible to do this, then you start to see how it's possible. And once you see how it's possible, then you can start to go deeper into who's behind it and why and where they've come from. This is where you go into the historical part of it. Where has this force come from that is behind world events today and has been throughout known human history? And where do they want to take us? That's the other part of it. And that's why, you know, when I talk at events like Wembley Arena on the 27th of October, I'm going to be talking for 9 hours in an event lasting something like 12. It's because there are 4 sections, and it's going to be more deep down the rabbit hole than ever before, because you're continually learning more and understanding more. And in many ways, it becomes simpler the more you know, because you can see how they do it. And it's about the nature of reality, which is fundamental. We have to understand that, because the nature of reality, this solid world that we get indoctrinated to believe in, is not the understanding of the forces, the networks, the families that are behind this. They understand the nature of the reality that we're experiencing, which isn't solid. I mean, quantum physics has known that for a while. It's actually illusory, which means it's much more fluid and can be changed and manipulated in a much more fundamental way. And then you ask the question, well, where has this come from? Because this has not been going on for 5 years or 50 years, or even 500. And then the question is what's happening today and why and how are they doing it, or the banking crashes and the wars and all the rest of it. And then what do we do about it? And all these things are one seamless web, if you like. But it appears when you turn on the news and you go about your daily life that everything is apart from everything else. And you think, well, why are they doing this? This is obviously going to have this bad outcome for people. I mean, why don't they do it this way? Because obviously it will be better for people if they do it this way. Once you realize that they don't want it for better for people, they actually want an outcome which is akin to the world described by Orwell's 1984 and by Aldous Huxley's Brave New World and all this stuff, then you start to realize why they're doing so many things that have bad outcomes for people, because that's what they want. And this is the great tapestry of information that I've put together over the last 23 years. And, you know, I've done it full time. And like I said earlier, I've been to 55 countries. That's what it takes to uncover this. So what chance has anybody got of doing that when they go and, work a job for a living for their family, like 5 or more days a week, come home tired, they have their tea, they watch a bit of telly and go to bed and get up and the whole thing starts again. What chance have they got of unpicking this? None. Which is why, you know, I've dedicated my life. I mean, I work 12, 15 hours a day on this, almost, 6, sometimes 7 days a week, to actually using that time to connect these dots that other people are going about their daily lives simply don't have the time to do.
But David, let's take those people then, okay, who I'm John and I'm sitting in my 2 up, 2 down in Carlow, and I like watching the game on TV and maybe a bit of X Factor, and I go to work 9 to 5 because I'm lucky enough still to have a job. I know what the world is about. It's about knuckling down, and fine, we're in straitened times now, but we just got to put up with that, don't we? And I know that I've got my 5 senses and that's my reality, and you just take the lot that's presented to you. Is that not what life is about, David?
Well, the foundation of the whole suppression of humanity is to sell us from cradle to grave a false self-identity. If you had 7 billion people plus who realized that their name and their job and their family history and their life story were not who they were, but what they were experiencing, and who they were was an expression of an infinite, limitless awareness that is having that experience, then trying to control, suppress, and herd 7 billion people in that level of self-awareness would be, well, it'd be a joke. Don't even start. Where you're going to start? Impossible.
Yeah.
So this conspiracy, fundamental bottom line, before we could go into any detail about banking scams and political scams and engineered wars, is to make this infinite awareness so programmed, so capture its point of attention and self-identity that it believes it is Ethel Jones. I work down the store. I was born in Dublin in 1948. I went to this Catholic school, and then I got myself a job, and then I got married, and I'm just little me. I'm just Joe Public. Well, I have no power. Then if you program someone into that self-identity, then you put lots of people like that together, and you can control them, and you can manipulate them, and you can herd them, and you can direct them in the way you want them to go, and you can do it without challenge or effective challenge, because the people you're targeting have been convinced they have no power to challenge you anyway. Indeed, because they're so head down trying to survive because of the way you've orchestrated the economic system, they have not had time to lift their head and look around and go, So that's what's going on. So they don't even know you exist, never mind what you're doing.
Yeah.
And this is the life story of billions of people, generation after generation after generation. And I've used the key word there, survival. And you can add to survival capturing attention. Because if you can get people to wake up every day having to survive another day financially, another week financially, another month financially, if you can focus the attention of people on survival, and those that are more financially fortunate, you focus their attention on achievement, on a career, or people who are into religion, you focus their attention on a religion. What you're doing, John, is you're focusing people on dots. You're focusing on a dot, I've got to survive, and it's a very big dot these days. You're focusing people on the Christian religion, it's a dot, that's my life. You can focus people on Manchester United.
Yeah.
And it's a dot. You can focus people on, I want to, have this successful banking career, political career, legal career, whatever, media career. It's a dot. And when you're looking at a dot, in that focus, you lose peripheral vision. And it's in the peripheral vision where the dots connect. And if you're only focusing on one, you're not even seeing most of the others, never mind seeing they're actually expressions of the same tapestry. And this is how it's done. And then you've got divide and rule, because what you've got is a situation where there is one infinite awareness, one infinite consciousness, and we are different expressions of it. We're different points of attention within that consciousness. So someone who's obsessed with Manchester United, his point of attention is Manchester United, and someone else's point of attention is survival or whatever.
Yeah.
But if we just awaken and open our minds, these cliches that have these fundamental truths in them, if we just open our minds, what are we doing? We are expanding our point of attention. We're no longer totally myopically focused on one dot. Now we're kind of expanding our point of attention. We're starting to encompass other dots. Now we've got a chance of seeing how they connect. Symbolically, it's like standing in front of a wall about half an inch away, and you're staring at that wall, and you're trying to work out what's going on. You're trying to work out what it is. You're trying to work out where you are. That's what happens when you focus on dots to the exclusion of everything else. But you start walking backwards, and now you're expanding your field of vision and awareness. Now you see the brick is part of a house. Now you see the house is part of a street. The street is part of a town, and so and so and so on. You go on. Mm-hmm. So you go out to a spaceship, and you see that actually the brick is part of a planet and a universe. So the point of your attention is key, because that's going to give you the fix on who you are, where you are, and the nature of what's going on. And this is why it's so important. If people do not have any kind of open mind, they shouldn't listen to a word I say, because they're wasting their time, and they should never come to an event or read any book of mine. Absolute waste of time, because it's challenging people. Not saying you must believe this, but it's challenging people to encompass a greater view of everything, to see how the dots connect. And when you do, for instance, let's take a topical subject. There's a financial situation in Ireland. Mm-hmm. On the face of it, it's a dot. Brian Cowan and the clowns in his circus, yep, made terrible mistakes and crashed the Irish economy, not because the Irish economy or the Irish people were fundamentally to blame for that, but because fantastic amounts of money were taken from the people through the government and handed to banks who got themselves into terrible trouble through outrageous, grotesque greed. Then in come the IMF and the European Union, and they say, we'll bail you out, but you have to take this package of things that you have to do, and this package of things means austerity for the people who have not been responsible for it and all the rest of it. Now, you can look at it at that level, but then you can look at it like this, that from the 1980s during Reagan-Bush right through to 2008 when the initial financial crash happened, checks and balances on the banks and the financial institutions were systematically removed and taken away. And what they knew, given the financial system as it is, that if you take the checks and balances away, then unfettered greed is going to run riot and it's going to crash the system. You know that. So the system crashes. And at that time, you had a situation where the banks were in trouble. The people and the governments were not too bad. The banks were in trouble.
Yeah.
And in a sleight of hand, that trouble was transferred from the banks to the governments to the people. And it was done by the governments using vast amounts of borrowed money to bail out the banks. And then, because the big massive bailouts got governments into trouble, now they are in financial stuck and they need bailing out by the IMF and the European Central Bank, etc., which is our money anyway. And suddenly the IMF and the European Central Bank and the European Union are saying, we'll bail you out, but you've got to do A, B, and C, which, as I said earlier, means austerity for the people. So the banks crash because of the banks' greed. That financial hole is then transferred to the government, and it's from the government it's transferred to the people. Now all over Europe, indeed all over the world, because the American economy is in terrible trouble. It's just a disaster waiting to crash. It's over there. Matter of time. The people are losing their homes. People are losing their jobs and their livelihoods through no fault of their own. They want to go to work. They're not, saying I don't want to work, but there's no work because the economy's crashed because of the actions of the banks. But the banks are still running and paying themselves enormous bloody bonuses, most of them all over the world. It's been the biggest transfer of wealth from the richest few to the many, or from the many rather to the richest few in the whole of human history, probably. We've watched it before our eyes. And so when you put it in that context, what happened in Ireland was just a dot within a great tapestry of financial manipulation. Yeah. So what's going on? What we need to understand to get a fix on the world and why these events happen, including wars and all the rest of it, is where does this network of families and secret societies want to take us? They want to take us into a world where a world government makes all the major decisions in the world, where it has a world central bank that controls all world finance, that has a single world currency, which would be electronic, no cash, for which there are fundamental implications for freedom, because at the moment, if you go with a credit card, electronic money into a store or something, and it won't accept your card, at least you can pay cash. When they take cash out of circulation and there's one single electronic currency, which is where they want, and cash is going out of circulation so fast, then when that machine says no to your electronic money, there is no alternative to purchase except barter. That's the idea, control. So they also want a microchip population, which people laughed at me years ago when I said that was on the agenda, and now it's being introduced in various guises around the world already. So that's where they want to take us. They also want a world army to replace national armies. National armies would become parts of the world army, with a world army ruling elite dictating what it does. And the world army is designed to impose the will of the world government on any country, community or region that does not want to take its diktats. Now, we have a world government already in a de facto form, and it's called the international community, the United Nations Security Council, the G8, and all the rest of it. And we have a de facto world army imposing its will called NATO. And so you have a situation where they pass some, oh no, this Gaddafi, oh no, he's a terrible man, and all that stuff. So send the boys in. The world army goes in to impose the will of the world government upon Libya, upon Iraq, upon all these other countries. That's happening now in more and more extreme stages, because it's where they want to take us. So that's where they want to take us. So in terms of how they take us there are two basic techniques of mass-minded emotional manipulation. One I call problem reaction solution, where you create a problem covertly. It could be an economic crash, it could be a 9/11, it could be anything that causes a major problem in society.
Yeah.
You then tell the people the version of that problem that you want them to believe. It's not the truth, because you've covertly created it yourself, but you tell the people it was because of this, that, or some guy with a beard in a cave in Afghanistan that all this happened. Mm-hmm. And what you're looking for at stage 2 of problem reaction solution is a reaction, a response from the public to the manufactured problem. You're looking for fear, you're looking for outrage, and you're looking for something must be done. What are they going to do about it? At which point you, who've covertly created the problem, got that reaction, then offer the solutions to the problems you have created. And the other technique is what I call the totalitarian tiptoe. I'm going to describe the European Union here. Okay. You start at stage A, and you know you're going to Z. But you know if you go from A to Z too quickly, the change is going to be so great that people are going to look up from the game shows and the football, and they're going to say, what the heck's going on? So you go from A to Z as quickly as you can, but not so quickly as to alert too many people that there's a pattern and a direction here. This is how the European Union became the centralized fascist communist dictatorship that essentially is now, a centralized bureaucracy, after starting out as it's just a free trade area, nothing to worry about, it's good for jobs and all the rest of it. And when you look at some of the people that started the European Union, like the Frenchman Jean Monnet, who was a frontman for the House of Rothschild, they are massively involved. They are. You see their private quotes at the time, that we're talking decades ago, and you see what the game is and why we've ended up where we are now. Jean Monnet is called the founding father of the European Union as it's become, and he said in a letter to a friend, the day after I was born, 60 years ago, April the 30th, 1952, he said, Europe's nations should be guided towards the superstate without their people understanding what is happening. This can be accomplished by successive steps, each disguised as having an economic purpose, but which will eventually and irreversibly lead to federation. So what we've had here is a stepping stone from it's just a free trade zone, more and more, if we just centralize this, it would be more efficient, and we'll centralize, and we've now ended up with a bureaucratic dictatorship dictating to hundreds of millions of people in fine detail of their lives all over Europe. Now, one of the things on the wish list is a single electronic currency, a world currency for everybody. So the euro is not an end, it's a means to an end. You see, the euro at some point, I'm not saying tomorrow, the euro at some point is going to crash. Why? Because it has to crash, it has not to work, so that they can take that problem and offer the solution, which is this world currency, the more they crash the world economy, the more they say, well, I have to restructure the whole world economy to sort out these problems, and it will be restructured in their image. The other thing that they want economically is a world central bank. As a result of the crash since 2008, these institutions and these front men that work for these families and these networks like George Soros and the Roman churches, Catholic churches come out, both of them, and called for a world central bank to sort out the problem reaction solution. So what we've seen with the euro, it's simply a mopping up exercise. In one great fell swoop on the stepping stones, the totalitarian tiptoe to the world single currency, the euro has been the stalking horse to remove the mark, the guilder, the lira, all of these things, the Irish currency, and take them out of circulation. So now we're basically, in most of Europe, down to one. That's one step from the world currency. This is how you have to see how the dots connect to realize where they're going. Now, because of this, and this relates to Ireland as well, because this European project, just one of this great tapestry of things they want to change in the world, because it is fundamental to their agenda, to the outcome they want of economic and political centralized bureaucratic tyranny, they cannot possibly take no for an answer with this little nicety like referendums where the people reject their next dose of centralization. So whenever a European country has voted against, in referendums, public referendums, against something they want in terms of more centralization of power, these people have not accepted the will of the people. They have waited a while. Are you listening, Ireland? Do you just sound familiar? They've waited a while, manipulated in the background, and then had another referendum to change the result. That's what happened in Ireland. Ireland could have stopped so much if they'd have voted against it, because at that point, the European Constitution or the European, treaties, whatever, would not have been able to go forward. So they had to have another referendum, and whether it was by absolute fraud or by changing the minds of enough people in Ireland, they got eventually what they wanted. Have you ever known them, John, to have another referendum just checking after the people voted for what they want? No.
Never happens.
And then when the Dutch and the French voted massively against the so-called European Constitution, it was so massive that even they realized that how long are they going to have to wait before they could change that result? No, they weren't going to. So what did they do? They said, we're going to change the name of the Constitution to a treaty. Yeah. We're going to keep in actually 98% of what was in the Constitution, but we're going to call it a treaty. We referendum result now because they voted against Constitution, but it's not a Constitution anymore, honest. It's a treaty. And so the Lisbon Treaty went through, and Ireland voted for the Lisbon Treaty in the second referendum. And what happened? We crossed the Rubicon. We crossed that point where so much power was now centrally hoarded by the bureaucracy in Brussels that they can basically do what they like. And what's happened since the Lisbon Treaty is we've had centralization of power on steroids. And they want more and more problems to which they can offer more and more solutions. What has happened as a result of the terrible economic situation in Greece, where people are selling or giving away their children because they can't feed them, where people are committing suicide because they feel they have no hope, what's happening in Spain, what's happening in Portugal, what's happening in Italy. As a result of that, they're saying what we need, this Herman van Rompuy, Rumpy Pumpy, crikey, I wouldn't trust that guy to tell me the time in a room full of clocks. What are they calling for? And this Barroso, this commission buddy leader, they're calling for more centralization of power for the bureaucracy to solve the problem of the European economic crisis. They have no shame. But without this background knowledge, John, of the goal of this and the methods used to get there, people are looking up, understandably, saying, what's going on? I don't like it, but what's happening? And some people are saying, as you mentioned earlier, oh, it's all right, it's not good now, but we'll come. No, you won't. I'll tell you why you won't come out of it. They don't want you to come out of it until changes take place which suit them, by which time the solution is in place, and then they'll move on to the next problem.
And that kind of leads me on, David. I mean, we speak about the cause and effect, but there's also another why, and I suppose it's more a who than why, because as I look at the news every day, and it doesn't matter what my source of news happens to be, there are a number of states or governments that seem to be able to act with impunity, such as the US or Britain, for that matter. There's also an elephant in the room, and to my mind, that's Israel, because I can't understand how a country like Israel can, for example, get away with their nuclear policy while they'll shite from a height on Iran, for example, and they're backed all the while by the US government. So we're talking geopolitics here, but does it go beyond that, or are we talking about big business and big business only, or the power of governments? Surely it goes deeper than that again, does it?
Oh, very much so. And like I say, this has not been going on for 5 minutes. It might help if I explain how the whole thing came about, really, as briefly as I can. This goes back thousands of years to families that came out of the Middle East, places like ancient Sumer and Babylon, Egypt. Babylon is the land we now call Iraq, Mesopotamia. And they moved up into Rome. They became the Roman Empire, or the rulers of the Roman Empire. And they became the royal and aristocratic families of Northern Europe. And they ruled by royal and aristocratic dictatorship. There came a point where these bloodline, the divine right of kings and all that is all part of it, were facing a rebellion from people who had had enough of royal dictatorship. And there was this massive sleight of hand where the royal dictatorships either disappeared or apparently lost power, like the British royal family and all that stuff, like hell they have. If you look at the power they have in the background, and they were replaced by the dark suits of politicians and bankers and industrialists and corporations. But they were the same bloodlines. They may not have had a crown on their head, but they were the same bloodlines. It's a network of families, and what they did was to, through the European empires, not least the British, expanded their influence all over the world. And when they went into the Americas, into Africa, into Asia and Australia and New Zealand, they obviously expanded and took these bloodlines out to these far-flung places. And they took with them the secret society network, which covertly manipulates these people and their agents into power to dictate society on all levels: corporations, banks, politicians, military, all of it, media. And then there came this apparent point where the powers of Europe, the colonial powers of Europe, gave independence to the former colonies. And the British Empire rolled back, and these other empires rolled back. But that was only on the surface. What happened is, what was left out in these former colonies, as they claim to be, was the bloodline under different names, doesn't go under one name, multiple names, and the secret society networks that manipulate them into power. They stayed there. And they've gone on controlling those countries ever since, in line with a global agenda. And what they've created is a secret society version of a transnational corporation. If you take someone like McDonald's or anyone, these transnational corporations, if you go into a McDonald's anywhere in the world, in any country in the world, you're going into basically the same McDonald's.
Yeah.
It's a global image. It's a global way of doing things, and it's dictated globally. It's dictated from the center that all this is done the same. You have in each country the McDonald's of that country, and they work to a blueprint dictated from the headquarters. And woe betide if they, move off from it. What these network of families have done is created a global version using secret societies. So the center of this web, the headquarters, if you like, is in Europe. It's in places like the City of London, Paris, Berlin, Rome, Belgium, Brussels, and it dictates the global agenda, the way it's going to move. To a certain extent, it's in the United States, yes, but not as much as you'd think. In so many ways, the United States is the diversion. You look to the United States as the big bad one behind it, and in terms of firing the guns, it is. But a lot of the guns are actually loaded in Europe covertly, not least in Britain, in London. Mm-hmm. By the governments, but by the secret society center that's based in places like London and Rome. And so in each country, you have a network of families and secret societies that has the job of imposing the centrally dictated agenda upon their country in terms of banking, finance, government, media, and all these institutions that dictate society. And so the center dictates the global agenda, and each of these satellite, if you like, subsidiary networks that we call countries, those secret society networks impose the central agenda in their sphere of influence. And this is why when I travel around the world, I see the same things happening in different countries, often at the same time, using the same excuses, because it's centrally coordinated. And so you have the center of the web. And the center of the web, what I call the spider, is dominated, because these families are also a hierarchy, by families like the royal families of Europe to a large extent, but there's also the banking families like the House of Rothschild, the House of Rockefeller, etc. And the House of Rothschild comes up again and again, ancient and modern. The House of Rothschild did not create Zionism, what I call Rothschild Zionism, to keep underpinning the true creators and controllers of it.
Tell us what Zionism is, David.
Zionism, even in its play-out expression, is a political system. It's a political view that things should happen. But at its core, this is what people miss, it's another secret society, and a very, very important one. And so I call it Rothschild Zionism because the Rothschilds created it. The Rothschilds orchestrated the imposition on the Palestinians of the state of Israel. Some breakaway members of the Rothschild family have confirmed this and said that Israel is just the fiefdom of the Rothschilds. I mean, it's no good, people saying, oh, it's all the Jewish people, it's the Israelis. You've got 400,000 Israelis on the streets of Israel protesting about their financial plight. You've Israelis, Jewish people in Israel recently who've actually committed suicide by setting themselves alight in protest at the economic plight of Israelis. See, this is the point. The hierarchy in Israel answers to the spider, not to the people of Israel. It answers to the spider. The hierarchy that runs America answers to the spider. The hierarchy of Britain answers to the spider. The hierarchy of Ireland answers to the spider. That's why Brian Cowen acted in the way he did. Any decent man with an ounce of decency left would have walked away from the mess that he created with his mates. I say not by accident either, personally.
Yeah.
He would have said, I've created this mess. I'm walking away to let someone sort it out. No, he said, I won't resign until the austerity program and the situation agreements with the IMF, etc., are in place. Why? Because there was a danger that if he came out, someone might come in and say, we're not doing it.
And you're dead right, because this astonished a lot of people in Ireland at the time, the gall of him, because he was, well, pretty much the most maligned man at the time in Ireland because of what was going on. And rather than walk away, he did literally give the middle finger to the people and said, no, I'm going to oversee this. I'm going to make sure this happens. And it's exactly what he did. You've hit the nail on the head there. Yeah,
but you know why he did it? Because he was terrified not to do it. I mean, you know, when I look at Brian Cowan, is there life on Brian Cowan? I'm not sure. I don't see much brain cell activity myself, but he's just a front man. He's like, there's basically three types of people that become at the top level of politics. There's the tiny few who actually are in on the game to some considerable extent, support it, and take those decisions based on that support for their agenda. There's the second one that is compromised in endless ways, and therefore is terrified of doing anything except doing what they're told by those in the shadows, because they know that if they don't, then what they've got to hide is coming out. So many are in that situation. And there's the other type that just want power and prestige and all that stuff just for the sake of it, and know that they have to please these people in the shadows if they're going to do it, and they have to do that by doing what those in the shadows tell them. But when the referendum in Ireland, the first one, was going pear-shaped in terms of the result that the European Union hierarchy wanted, the fear on Cowan's face was there to see. He was told, this is how it works. You do not leave office until this is in place. And therefore he did exactly what you've described that he did. And the man should be in jail. Never mind in exile, away from politics. He should be in jail, what he's done to Ireland and its people.
I agree.
But these people, they get away with it because, of course, the people control the orchestration of the next people that come in as well. I mean, you know, the way that the Cameron government has gone out of its way to protect Tony Blair, apparently the opposition, from actually facing the consequences legally of his actions in office has been, you know, blatant. This is how it works. You know, we're supposed to have two political parties. In every now and again we might get a bit of one as an alternative, but mostly we don't have an alternative at all because they're controlled by the same force. So you then have this situation then where these networks in the individual countries dictate to those countries and push those countries in the same direction dictated from the center. Now, one of these major secret societies, like I say, is Rothschild Zionism. And so you get this extraordinary situation in America. I've documented it in my books. The Jewish population of America is less than 2%, and many people, Jewish people, are not Zionists. They don't believe in Zionism. People have no idea how many Jewish people go on rallies and protest, because the media never covers it, protesting against Zionism and what it's doing to the Palestinians and all the rest of it. Massive rallies sometimes in places like America, but it's never reported. So people think that everyone who's Jewish must be a Zionist. It's not really true. And many of the people who are Jewish and consider themselves Zionists only do so because they don't understand what actually Zionism really is. And the number of Rothschild Zionists in positions of power in America, the Rothschild Zionists completely controlled the Bush administration through organizations like the Project for the New American Century, which was behind the invasion of Iran, of Iraq, and the invasion of Afghanistan, etc., is incredible. I mean, it's unbelievable. There have been books written about it. Like, hold on a second. Less than 2% of the population, but everywhere you seem to look, there they are. They control Hollywood, Rothschild Zionists. They control the American media. Jewish people have come out and said this. Oh, of course we do. Anyone who says we don't is talking ridiculous. Look at the names. Then you've got Rothschild Zionism controlling clearly Israel, and people like Netanyahu, and you've got them controlling Britain through Rothschild Zionists like David Cameron, etc. And the same in so many other countries around the world. So their first allegiance is not to the people. it's to Rothschild Zionism a secret society. And by the way, there's very few things that Joe Biden, the deputy president of the United States, has said in his life probably that I agree with, but one thing is undeniably true. He said once, you do not have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. Some of the major Zionists in America are the Christian Zionists. People like this John Hagee and all these people that get into the pulpit, they're not Jewish. They're Christians, but they're Christian Zionists, because Zionism is not a race. It's on one level a political philosophy, and on another level deeper, it's a secret society. So when you then see, John, the bewildering on the face of it, if you don't understand the background, fantastic amounts of money that are given by the American government to the Israeli government for weapons and other things. It obviously doesn't get to the people, or they wouldn't be, setting themselves alight in protest at the economic plight. It goes to the elite of Israel, and it comes from the elite of America. It's because it's one hand of Rothschild Zionism handing to another hand of Rothschild Zionism. And this is how it works. This is why no matter what Israel does, America will never come out against them anywhere, never mind in the UN Security Council. Same with Britain. Same thing, because all three countries are controlled by the same force. Same with France under Sarkozy, probably under the new guy as well. And this is how it works. This is what's going on in the background. And of course, as I've been talking about for years and years, part of this agenda is to create a third world war, which would be a massive global problem, just like the first two, to which they can offer a massive global solution. Now, the solutions to the proposed and introduced to World War I and World War II were massive centralizations of power. After the First World War, we had the League of Nations. That didn't quite work. They have a Second World War. They have its successor, the United Nations, which is a stalking horse for world government. They have the IMF, the Bretton Woods agreement, which became the World Bank and all that stuff. And all these centralized global bodies came as a result of the problem-reaction solution of world wars. What they want is a third world war to complete that process. And there was a letter written by a man called Albert Pike, who was an infamous frontman for this global network. He was one of the most famous and lauded Freemasons in America. And he wrote a letter to another agent, if you like, called Giuseppe Mazzini, obviously Italian, in 1871. In which he described 3 world wars that would transform the world. He described the First World War and what would happen. That was accurate. He did it the Second World War. It was accurate. And this is what he said in the letter about the Third World War. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati, that's one name for this network, between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel as we call it, must mutually destroy each other. They couldn't care less about Israeli and Jewish people in Israel. Netanyahu won't be there when the bombs fly. Meanwhile, this letter from Pike said, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. And he goes on to say, then we move in and say the only way to save everything is to do what we suggest you do, which would be to create the world that they've been working for so long towards. So what we're looking at with what has happened in Iraq, what has happened in Afghanistan, what is happening or has happened in Libya and the civil war that's now unfolded there, and what they are doing in Syria covertly, as they did covertly for a start in Libya, and this obsession now for so long of the invasion of Iran is to, yes, get control of vast oil and gas fields, yes, but it's to trigger World War III. I've been saying for years that the idea is to create a trigger out of the Middle East that would bring NATO, the NATO countries, in a world war with the alliance of China and Russia. And we're now seeing this division unfolding where particularly Russia, but China to an extent too, are supporting Syria, and they're supporting Iran in this problem reaction solution, or alleged problem reaction solution of Iran and its not nuclear weapons, but plan to have them, it is claimed. Meanwhile, as you mentioned earlier, we have Israel with a vast arsenal of nuclear weapons, courtesy of the United States, who have not signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and there is an official policy agreement between America and Israel, which Obama said he was going to continue when he came to office, where America doesn't ask about Israel's nuclear arsenal and Israel doesn't talk about it. These are the people that are targeting Iran, that has not invaded anyone in living memory, while the United States and Israel are the two most trigger-happy countries on earth. And so what we're looking at is a plan to pick off country after country across northern Africa and the Middle and Near East. And the general or the military leader who was involved in NATO's attack on the former Yugoslavia, etc., a guy called General Wesley Clark, said in a television interview in America in 2007, remember that, 2007, and what's happened since then, he said that he was told immediately after 9/11, in September 2001, that a coup had been plotted by Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, and what he called half a dozen other collaborators from the Project for the New American Century. And this plot included the invasion of Iraq. This was immediately after 9/11, before Iraq's even nearly mentioned. And Cheney, Rumsfeld, and Wolfowitz were all prominent members of this Project for the New American Century, which was controlled by Rothschild Zionists, people like Richard Pearl, Paul Wolfowitz, etc. And it's interesting that in September 2000, this Project for the New American Century produced a document calling for a wish list of things it wanted to happen with the incoming Bush administration that they knew was going to win, because it was going to be made to happen even if he didn't do it legitimately, as we saw in Florida, etc.
Exactly.
And what they said was they wanted to invade and take over countries like Libya, Syria, Iran, Iraq, etc. And they said, here's the quote, they said in this document a year before 9/11, the process of transformation, this wish list they wanted to introduce, is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. 1 year later to the month, these people were in power, officially and unofficially, in the Bush administration. And we had 9/11, which is what George Bush called at the time our Pearl Harbor.
Exactly.
Result of that, this process of transformation in this document has unfolded before our eyes, and it continues to, justified by a war on terrorism when the terrorists are those that are pressing for the war on terrorism. And so going back to Wesley Clark, he said that immediately after 9/11 he was told about this coup and the invasion of Iraq. 6 weeks later, he told this television interviewer, he saw the same officer from the Pentagon, and he asked him, why haven't we attacked Iraq? Are they still going to attack Iraq? And the officer said, he said to him, sir, it's worse than that. The officer, he said, pulled up a piece of paper off his desk and said, I just got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office. It says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move on to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. Clark said in the interview that the aim of the plot was, quote, they wanted us to destabilize the Middle East, turn it upside down, and make it under our control. That is what we're seeing. But of course, they can't just come out and say that. So they have to find a different excuse for each country. Yeah. So what they did with Afghanistan was to say it was Taliban are not letting us have bin Laden, and bin Laden was behind it. Absolute lie, but because of that, we're going in. Then, because there's another version of problem reaction solution, and that's what I call no problem reaction solution. When there's not a real problem, you just give the people the belief that there is. So we had Blair and Bush, weapons of mass destruction, they can hit British targets in 45 minutes, and all this nonsense, these lies. They knew. Clark said, we was told immediately after 9/11 they're going to invade Iraq. And Blair and Bush are saying right up to when they invaded in 2003, oh, no, we're still trying to find a way out. This is why David Kelly was murdered.
Exactly, yeah.
Suicide. He was murdered because he knew they were telling lies. And he had a public profile suddenly as a result of what happened in his interview with the BBC correspondent. So they have to find an excuse. The excuse was invent one. Weapons of mass destruction. They go in, they slaughter, they kill and maim in excess of 1 million civilians, and they go in and they're still there because they control the country now. And then you go to Libya. What we need Libya. What we're going to do now? So what they do is this. And they've done the same in Syria. I've put all this in my last book. Remember Who You Are. First of all, they arm, fund, and train people to go into Libya as rebels. They then get the rebels with this arsenal they're given, and it was funneled to them through Qatar. It actually came out at one point. Qatar is another state of the United States, and see, they want democracy everywhere, but they don't bother about Qatar or Bahrain, are they? No, because they do what they're bloody told. And so they then get these rebels, alleged, made up, to start attacking government targets. At this point, the media are saying nothing about this. The Libyan authorities, and I'm not, saying, Gaddafi's an angelic being. No, but would people rather live in the Libya before or now? No question, given what's happening in Libya. It's horrific. And when the Libyan government troops reacted to these attacks, that's when the media came in. Oh, Gaddafi's killing his own people. And so we had this, what was it? Resolution 1973 at the UN Security Council. That's right. That was just a no-fly zone and all that stuff. There was nothing in it about pepper bombing whole cities of civilians, but NATO go in, the de facto world army, and they splatter the place. Then, well, if it worked once, it will work again. We're going to do the same in Syria. And that's why it's been well documented. People that were Libyan rebels then moved to Syria, and now they're Syrian rebels. And they're doing the same thing. They start killing government troops and attacking government targets. Nothing said. Stum quiet. Then the government responded. Assad's killing his own people, and off we go again. Mark II. Now they have to find a way of attacking Iran. And Iran have attacked no one in living memory. So how do we do this? Well, haven't they got a nuclear power? We'll say it, they're building nuclear weapons. And so that's the excuse they're using. But because of what's gone before, especially Iraq, people are not buying it to the same extent, and they're finding it more difficult. There's no question in my mind that their agenda's timescale meant they would be in Iraq by now, in Iran by now, rather. But they're not, because the aftermath of what happened in Iraq, etc., has meant they've got more skepticism to deal with. But this is what's happening. And what they want is the Syrian situation to roll over into Lebanon so that they can do that, and then roll over into Jordan, and they've got the set. And what they're now trying to do is connect Iran to both Lebanon and Syria so that they can say we need to attack Iran also, because they are supporting these government attacks on their own people in these countries, because they're going to start claiming that against Lebanon at some point. So this is how it all fits together. But that's what I've been talking about here, is only one small aspect, massive as it is for the people involved in the implications of a vast global plan. And that's why, at the Wembley event, I'm going to be talking for 9 hours. That's why my books are kind of massive, some of them, 355,000 words. Mm-hmm. It's because you need that to connect all these apparently unconnectable or unconnecting dots, which are fundamentally connected.
And there's so much more we could talk about, David, but I mean, as you say, we don't have 9 hours now, obviously. But tell us a little bit about Remember Who You Are, because your latest book touches on not just the geopolitical situation, which we've spoken about for quite some time now, but it touches on the spiritual side of things. And I suppose the rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper again, because it ties in aspects such, and this will be foreign to many, many listeners, such as the Saturn Moon Matrix and what's really going on outside of, I suppose, our conscious. And it talks about the subconscious and goes into quite a lot of universal concepts as opposed to our five-sense reality.
Yeah, well, five-sense reality is the prison. It's by a self-identity of purely the five-sense self that people think they're Ethel that works at the store. I have no power. But if people realized who they really are, the body, I call it a biological computer. Increasingly, there are some scientists who are going down that road too. And I left school at 15 to go and play football. You can educate yourself, and you can uncover these things yourself. You do not need, in fact, one of the worst things that can happen is a long period in the education system, because we can all program from its version of everything. But I call it a biological computer, and I call it body-mind. And body-mind is basically the five senses and a little bit beyond them. And our lower emotions, all surrounding fear and all the emotions that come from them. All the hatred, all the conflict comes within this body-computer reality overwhelmingly. But what we are infinite awareness, having that experience. However, if you can pull, here we go again, if you can pull someone's point of attention from the expanse of I am infinite awareness, having an experience through a five-sense vehicle, into only the five-sense vehicle, now you have got someone, in terms of their point of attention, not only in the world, but of the world. Because when you are having an experience, but you are aware of your true self, you are in the world, you're interacting with it through the body, but you're not of this world in terms of the point from which you're observing it. So you're seeing things. You're on top of the hill looking down on the town. You're not stood staring at a brick from half an inch away. So you can see what you can't see in that state. And the whole system, John, is, including the education system, science, and all these other institutions, they are designed to pull our point of attention into the five senses, and the five senses overwhelmingly alone. And religion does this. They call it spiritual, but it's about five senses overwhelmingly. And anyone that expands their awareness and starts talking about other dimensions and the illusory nature of reality, most of the people in the religions will call them kind of Satan and all that stuff. So, people are defending their own prison. You know that scene in The Matrix where Morpheus and Neo are walking down the street dodging people, and there's a shot of a person given a ticket, and paraphrase Morpheus, but he says basically these people are so inert, so what I would say programmed, that they are defending their own prison and fighting to defend it. That's what the people in the military are doing, John. They're fighting to defend their own prison on behalf of the people that have imposed the prison. It's crazy, but if you don't see the bigger picture, then you can work out some rationale in your mind for doing it. Oh, we've got to stop bin Laden. Well, bin Laden was on the payroll of the CIA for decades, and not least during the Russian or Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. I mean, oh, please. And so remember who you are is about remembering, because that's what it is. We are being manipulated to forget. We're in an amnesic state, forgetting our true nature and believing what we're told we are. Remember who you are is remembering the true self. And when you do, your whole life changes, because your point of perspective has changed. You've moved your point of perspective from facing the brick to looking at the town from the top of the hill. The world doesn't look the same. You and your potential no longer look the same. And this is the worst nightmare of this network, that we remember who we are. That's why I say remembering who you are is the revolution, because everything comes from that. When you start to remember who you are, you start to open your heart to the true intelligence, the true source of intelligence, which is the heart. This is where we get our intuitive knowing from. When people say, I just know, they don't put their hands to their head. They put their hands to their chest. I just know. Yeah. Why? Because instinctively, the body response is following where that is coming from, which is the heart. And I don't mean the physical heart, though that's an expression of it. I'm talking about the energetic, what we might call the spiritual heart, because the so-called physical body is just a hologram. Even some scientists are now beginning to see the blooming obvious and realize that it's holographic. This whole so-called physical reality is holographic. It's an expression, the holographic level is like a movie screen, and we need to deal with what's being projected on that screen and change that, and then the movie changes in our lives collectively and individually. So when we open our heart and move our point of observing and perceiving everything from purely the brain to the heart, then we start to access an innate intelligence, which is beyond thinking. When you say, I just intuitively know, or I intuitively feel, intuition has not gone through a thought process of working it out. The mind, which is very low level of thought, does not go well. I'm going to go there tomorrow, that's it. It's like, okay, let's look at the options. If I go there, what's the consequences of going there? I've got to break that appointment. And then, I've got to organize a train ticket to go there. That's going to be a hassle. No, it goes through this process of thought, whereas intuition says, I just know I've got to be there tomorrow. I know it. And it goes there. And when it goes there, in my experience anyway, there's something happens as a result of following that intuition, which is helpful to your life and your understanding and everything, which you would not have gleaned had you gone with a head that said, nah, it's too much hassle, I'm not going. And it's a whole new way of interacting with the world. And this is where synchronicity comes from. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, talked about synchronicity, where people call it, in another way, amazing coincidence. You'll never guess, mate, who was there when I got there. You'll never guess, just as I got there, this happened. It was unbelievable. That's synchronicity. And synchronicity goes into overdrive when we get the head out of the way, not completely, but we put it in its place and we go with our intuition. Because when people start to do that, a life of no coincidence, synchronicity, becomes a life of constant coincidence, synchronicity, because you are getting the block out of their way. Oh no, I've made an appointment to be there tomorrow. I can't go there. You've got that out of the way, which is blocking the flow that you go with to make these synchronistic, amazing coincidences happen, and you flow with them. The intuition goes, I don't care if I have got an appointment. I gotta be there tomorrow. I know it.
Yeah.
Then life ceases to be a drudge and something to survive, and it starts to become an adventure, because you're letting the adventure happen. Because the mind, as opposed to what I call the greater self, which I call consciousness, it's like a computer. It likes everything in its place. It don't like things to change much. Oh, we always have fish on Friday. Why? Well, we've always had fish on Friday. We'll have it on a Thursday, mate. Just a chance to break out of it. That is what stops synchronicity happening in your life. But when you get that out the way and you go with your heart, your knowing, then your life starts to change. That is what they are terrified of. They are terrified of mavericks. And who are mavericks? Mavericks are people that go with their heart. And they don't know what they're going to do next, never mind anybody else. And these families that are behind this are incredibly robotic. They're incredibly computer-like and software-like. And not only are they terrified of mavericks, because they know that that's a level that they can't access, a level of awareness, a level of potential they can't access. They don't understand mavericks because they don't have the ability to free flow like that. And if you look at society, John, and increasingly it's going more and more like that all the time, it is an expression of their state of being. They're obsessed with hierarchy. They're obsessed with structure and rules and regulations and all the rest of it. If you look at repeating ritual, if you look at the British royal family, which are a genetic expression of these bloodlines and their network, all that pomp and ceremony, all that stuff where they're in the same palace in a different part of the country at the same time every year. They're up in Balmoral now, I suppose. It's their time in Balmoral.
Yeah.
And now we're having the changing of the guard at this time. Oh, no, not that time, this time. And all this ritual that goes on in royal weddings and all this stuff, that is absolute classic expressions of their mentality, where everything has to run like clockwork and everything has to be structured and everything's hierarchical. You know this thing where after the Queen's Jubilee, Diamond Jubilee, the Queen announced that William's wife, Kate Middleton, now has to curtsy to the daughters of Prince Andrew because the Queen has just realigned the order of hierarchy. So you curtsy at her and he bows at you and all that stuff. That's classic, the mentality of these bloodlines behind this whole conspiracy. And thus, society express their mind. And what are they doing all the time? Through things like political correctness, which is absolutely their creation through an organization called the Frankfurt School that came out of the Rothschilds, the Rothschild dynasty in Frankfurt, and then moved to eventually California, from where, of course, political correctness overwhelmingly came out of. That's to suppress people so they can't express their view, they can't express their spontaneity and all this stuff. So you have people in some councils, they don't say we're going to have a brainstorming session because that might upset people with epilepsy. We could call them thought showers and all this stuff. And people with epilepsy say, we don't bloody mind, we don't connect the two. Oh, well, we don't want to upset you. It's not about not upsetting minorities. It's about suppressing the ability of people to express themselves. And you look at everything. It's almost impossible these days to go through a working day or a day without breaking some kind of law, knowingly or unknowingly. There was a law passed, a new law, every 3 hours during the 10 years of Blair in Downing Street, and so it's gone on. And these laws and regulations are all to suppress our ability to be spontaneous, our ability to express our uniqueness, ability to follow our intuition, because they want to put us in a mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical prison. And that's what this is all about, and that's why the world's going in the Orwellian direction that it is so fast.
And that's exactly it, David. I can remember from being back in school, as early as then, being very, very frustrated by, I suppose, being almost forced to conform or to be in a specific box because somebody told me that was the way it was done. And my experience in school was that it was a very suppressing environment. Personally, I'd be quite a creative person, and I would like to think outside of boxes. That wasn't, I mean, not only was that not encouraged, that was outright forbidden in the school that I went to. And I think that's repeated throughout not just the education system, but society, as you've said, in general. And it's real, I don't know, our complex thinking to suppress the creative side or the emotional side or even the spiritual side of people. All these, the feeling is almost to be overridden by the thought. And for me, there should be harmony between the two.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you sat down many decades ago now and said, how do we take spontaneous children full of wonder about the world with endless potential, how do we take those children and turn them into the adults that we need to run and people our system of conformity and control? You would say, well, if we could get them away from the parents as early as possible and put them under our control, being told our version of reality and our version of who they are for decades from being a small child, and we will reward them if they tell the exam paper what we've told them to believe, and we will punish them if they don't with not passing. Then we won't get all of them. Some of these blooming humans, they can be so maverick, you know. But we'll get most of them, and we'll have the adults we want. Now, what do children learn from school? One, they learn that truth comes from authority. They learn that intelligence is the ability to remember and repeat. They learn that an accurate memory and repeating what you've remembered are the way to intelligence and reward. That non-compliance with this system is punished, and that you need to conform intellectually and socially. And what school is, let's take away all the other stuff that hides this fact. What school is a prison. It's a prison. It's a prison that allows you to go home for a few hours before you come back compulsory. It's like being a prisoner who's electronically tagged, that has to report to the police station once or twice a day. Only instead of, you know, the guy going to the police station and having to sign that he's been there and goes home, the children stay in the prison even longer. And you have prison warders called teachers, and their job is to tell the children to believe what the curriculum, i.e. the state, has told them to believe. And if they do that, they get advancement to become head teachers or whatever. And if they don't do that, and encourage the children to think for themselves, then they're out the door very quickly. And there's another advancement of that now, of course, where the people that control the banking system are the same people ultimately, these network of families that control the education system. And so now they've got 2 for 1. They've got young people going into virtually lifelong debt to pay for their own programming at university on money lent to them by the banks. And because by the time they leave, they are a mortgage amount in debt, then have to serve the system and do the system's bidding if they are going to earn the money to pay the system back for their programming. This is how far we've gone. And I say to young people, what are you going to university for? What are you going to university for? Okay, there's some things that I want to be this, I want to be that, I have to go to university. I understand that. But why are so many people going to university? Oh, well, that's what you do, innit? You go to university. But why are you going? What course are you going to take? Well, I've not decided yet. Well, why are you going then? You know, I left school at 15. You know, I've written 20 books. I've spoken to people all over the world about these very complex subjects, not because I'm super intelligent, but because I've educated myself in my time on my terms.
Exactly.
The system's terms. And I don't owe the banks a penny in paying for my education. Not a penny. You can do it yourself. Don't listen to the system when it tells you you must do this, and this is the way it is. You go to school, you pass exams, and then you go to university. Don't tell them. Or don't accept that when they tell you that. Go your own way. Express your own uniqueness. Be the only you, not a clone of everybody else, and a system that can only control us en masse if we're all clone-like and sheep-like.
Well, I think if people take nothing else from our chat here today, David, that is the crux of what they should really take on board, because, as you say, we are all expressions of the universe experiencing ourselves at the moment. So, for example, I'm not necessarily John Gibbons or what people would perceive as John Gibbons. I'm just the universe, I suppose, experiencing some time as the entity known as John Gibbons. And I think we lose sight of what it is we truly are and what we can be. And that ties in with the title of your book, Remember Who You Are, because when I began my own journey not so long ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I was a completely different person to the person I am now, and nobody else made me who I am now. I did it myself, and will continue to do so as long as I'm experiencing this journey, I suppose. So I think your words are poignant, and there'll be a lot of people out there who will want more. So tell us first off about the current book, and then tell us about Wembley.
Well, Remember Who You Are is about that. Who are we? Where are we? What is the nature of reality? But there is a heck of a lot, because I'm a doc-connector explaining all the subjects we've talked about today, and a lot more in terms of the current events that people are experiencing and the background to world events. What I wanted to do, John, with Wembley, and we took a big financial gamble with it, but we can't mess around anymore. We've got to go for it. This thing's moving fast.
Yeah.
Was to give people the opportunity to gather in large numbers, many thousands. We've got 5,500 seats, to make a statement that something's happening here. Something's changing. People are starting to look at life in a different way, and they're even going to listen to that nutter and what's going on, and also to say we're not having it anymore. We're not having this suppression and this manipulation anymore. And also, when you get together thousands of people together with open minds, I can tell you from doing it all over the world, the energy that's generated is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And that doesn't go nowhere, it goes out. When you put something into the energy field, it can affect large numbers of people who pick that up. People think that there is empty space between us, but that's only from the 5 sense level of perception, what we call visible light, which is a tiny, tiny band of frequency, which is the only frequency band that we can see with our eyes or decode with our eyes. But actually, if you go deeper into the energy field, there is an energetic sea, a universal field that is connecting all of us. And at that level, this energy that's created at this event goes out at that level into the electromagnetic field, into the ether, or whatever you want to call it. And it changes the nature of the sea, because the conspiracy is about controlling that sea of energy, which they know exists, and they're working it all the time. They want to fill that sea with low vibrational human emotion, fear, anger, hatred, conflict. Because if you know, it's a simple question: how do you affect all the fish at the same time? You affect the sea, and then you affect all the fish because they're swimming in it. Well, we're moving around all the time in this energetic sea, this electromagnetic field, and what some people call the ether beyond it, and therefore the nature of that sea impacts upon us. You know, when you go into a house where there's been an enormous amount of negative things, maybe murders and all the rest of it, you go in there and people go, "Cool, I don't like this. It's horrible. I want to leave here. Oh, I don't like it." What they're doing is picking up the quote atmosphere. And what is the atmosphere? It is the thought, the mental and emotional energy in the energetic field where they are. When you go to a football match and there's a big crowd, people say, "Oh, the hairs on my neck stood up." Well, what is that? That's generated by an electromagnetic field, which is generated by the excitement of the crowd. And it's in this electromagnetic level and beyond energetically that this whole conspiracy is orchestrated. What we see is just the movie screen of that orchestration, that energetic level. And so when we go on protests with anger and hatred about those we're protesting against, understandable as that is in places like Greece, we are actually adding to the field of low vibrational, distorted emotion that we want to fill the energy field with. And again, when you open your heart, you stop doing that. It doesn't mean you run away and you don't stand up. You stand up more, because one thing that the heart doesn't have is fear. Heart will always do what it knows to be right, not what it thinks is right for it in the moment. The brain does that. And therefore, an event like Wembley can have an enormous impact, even on the global energy field. And I'm not kidding, because the Earth is interpenetrated and circled with a vast network of energetic force lines. Some people call them ley lines. Other people call them meridian lines. The Chinese call them dragon lines, etc. And where a lot of these lines cross, a massive vortex is thrown up of energy, which if you can impact upon that vortex, that change goes out down the lines through which the energy is spinning from the vortex, and impacts upon the energy field of the Earth in general, therefore the sea we're living in. And London is a major center of this global grid. That's a key, and so is Rome, and that's why these families build their main centers on these Earth energetic major points. This is why the Olympics was in London at this time, following on from the Diamond Jubilee of the Queen, when there was lots of ritual and massive crowds in London and all the rest of it. And the opening and closing ceremonies, won't go into them now, it's a program in itself, but they were orchestrated to play the energy. For instance, you know, I'm talking about focuses of attention. At the point where that Olympic flame came together in that very unique way that it did at the end of the closing ceremony, billions of people worldwide, not just the 80,000 in the stadium, billions of people worldwide were focused upon that flame. And there's a very true line that goes, energy flows where attention goes. You know, when you can have somebody, I was doing a radio interview the other day, and the host was talking about the fact that he felt someone's was looking at him. He says, I felt like the eyes in the ears, you know, stuck in my back. He said, and I turned round and there was someone staring at me. Well, obviously it wasn't the eyes of the person that he was feeling. It was the person's focus of attention, which takes an energetic form, and thus you feel it within your energetic field. It comes through to the conscious if you like, senses, and you think someone's looking at me, and you turn around. This is where so much of this so-called paranormal and all this other stuff comes from. It comes from information entering at the electromagnetic level and coming through to the conscious mind. And you think, well, where did that come from? It came out of nowhere. It didn't. It came into the conscious mind from the electromagnetic level.
And so I think it could even be argued, David, that there is no such thing as paranormal. There's just what we are aware of and what we're not aware of, because everybody experiences these things, which means they're normal to me.
The paranormal, John, as it's called, takes us into those levels that awaken us. That is why the system has marginalized the normal that they don't want people to know about, and they call it the paranormal, and blood, gore, suffering are the norm. The normal. I say to people, do you think this world is sane? Yeah. Well, please, call me insane. Because if you think I'm sane, I've got such a problem. You know, how can we be happy about being called sane by a world that's clinically insane? So when you think about the eyes on the back example, and someone feels it and turns around, imagine the energy generated by the focus of billions of people on that flame. Now, on the electromagnetic level, on the deeper level beyond that of non-form energy, they trawl at, because they know what they're doing. Because this is not just about a network of families in human form. It's about things that go much deeper than that. And I go into that in great detail as well.
Well, David, I must say I'm very excited about the October event, October 27th in Wembley Arena. Tickets available on ticketmaster.co.uk. And, of course, people can get your books through your site, davidicke.com. That's correct, yeah?
Right, yeah.
David Icke, I have the power, you have the power, we have the power. Thanks for joining me. No doubt we shall speak again.
Yeah, we need far more people like you who actually stand up and give people a voice, mate. Thank you, and all the best in the future.
Alchemy Radio.
Not anymore. Learn to roll. One true self, a settled score. Run with all my height. Stand with shoulders wide. Step clean out of life. Hold my head up high. They can take my eyes, but I still take to flight. They can't break my mind. For what I'm born with is mine. Remember who you are. Remember who you are. Find your feet and take to the streets. Don't comply with glorious belief. There's the lead, has no power over me. Run with all my height. Stand with shoulders wide. Step clean out of life. Hold my head up high. They can take my eyes, but I still take to flight. They can't break my mind. For what I'm born with is mine. Remember who you are. Remember who you are. Stand as one, stand as one, stand as one. Stand as one, stand as one, stand as one. Stand as one, stand as one, stand as one. Stand as one, stand as one, stand as one. Stand as one, stand as one, stand as one. Stand as one, stand as one, stand as one.
lecture.